these terminologies mean from where you see it, from what you do, from your different work environments. What do you define a social norm to be? And what is a gender norm? And of course, we can also relate to an example of these norms. So just have your phone and just go to your Google search engine and look for Menticom. Just type in there, Menticom, and you can use that code you see on the screen, but also there is a link in the chat. Just go in there and let's brainstorm for 5 minutes on these 3 aspects and questions. Is that instruction clear? So you can use the chat. There is a link there posted, and we can respond to those questions. Question 1, what is a social norm? Question 2, what is a gender norm? And question 3, mention any example of either a social or a gender norm that you know about. Okay. So we're on question 1. What is a social norm? Okay, someone said norms that are presumed acceptable in a particular society, and when not done, it's punishable. And another one said a social norm is what communities consider it's normal and acceptable practice. Okay, as more members are typing unwritten rules in the society where the society accepts and keep expectations of what one should do. Okay, let's move to question 2. What is a gender norm? Of course, we are battling with time, so we shall just give 1 minute to each question. What is a gender norm? You can type 1 word you feel describes the gender norm according to you. Members, any responses there? Any insights? Okay. We have a non-response there. Let's move to the 3rd, maybe it will be better. Can we mention any one social or gender norm you know about? In 1 minute. Members, feel free to use the link in the chat. Okay, so I think there's a challenge with accessing the Menticom.
But people are typing the
Yeah,
chat.
but keep typing in the chat and also keep accessing that link in the chat as we proceed with our presentation. So I'll move back to the presentation, and as the point of takeaway, one, we are going to look at what the social norms and gender norms are, the difference between the two. And then we are expected to know how do we identify these norms, because many times we actually deliver interventions that are dealing with social norms, but when we have not identified these norms, we actually don't know what we are addressing, what norms we are addressing. Are they social? Are they gender? So there is that mix. So we need to define those and identify them. So, and of course, the third is how do we measure, what approaches do we use to deliver these interventions, but also making sure that we are aware of the impact that we are creating. We are shifting these norms. So how do we get to know that actually we are moving in the right direction in terms of achieving our objectives? So I have a scenario here, and this is an example where many of us in our day-to-day lives, in the schools where we went, in the hospitals, in the banks, we have this principle of waiting in the line for service. But can we have someone to unmute and tell us why? Why do we believe in waiting in the line for a service? Can anyone give us their perspective? Members, remember this is an interactive session. It's not the usual session that we usually come and, share information, but we want to make it more practical and lively. Okay, so if you feel free also to respond in the chat, but I see Joanna has raised the hand. Yes, Joanna, please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. I think why we wait in the line is majorly it's order, so that we are all served, but without disorganization. Someone might want to come and rush to get served, and yet they've just arrived, they've just found you there, and you've been waiting for hours. I think it's majorly for order, so that maybe first come, first serve, just that.
So it's just because it's expected that when we wait in the line, it's actually we shall maintain order.
Yes, and if we don't wait in the line, usually people get rowdy, the place gets crowded, they are disorganized, there's noise. I mean, sometimes you fail to serve them, depends on who is standing on the line, but usually if they don't stand in the line, there's a lot of disorganization there.
Okay, so let's put it in a different perspective. How about if a man, you're in a line in the bank, and a gentleman with a bag of money comes and moves ahead of you and goes to the counter and is served? What is the perspective there? What do you think? What comes to your mind?
Of course, that's not fair in the first place. You're a man and you've found me a woman. In our society, we believe that men are stronger than the women. So if you're a man and you found me standing on the line and you're flooping, you're rushing to get served, and I've been standing there for hours, then first of all, I'll lose my respect for you. You don't respect women. And then the other thing is that I'll feel disrespected, because I mean, I've been here, I've been waiting to get served, and you're just rushing to get served. That's not nice.
What if it's a woman who came and bypassed you and definitely she's served, but maybe she has a child? What would you think? Would it be disrespect?
Yes, I think if I don't know, regardless, whether woman or man, I think it depends on why they are rushing to get served first. If for example, they are sick, the woman is pregnant, she's maybe she's nursing, she has a little baby with her, I don't know. There are situations whereby I can allow where it's acceptable, even if it's a man. Let's assume it's a hospital and this man is really, I've gone with a headache, or maybe I've gone for a checkup or a review, and this man has come and his tummy is paining bad and is in a terrible condition. There are situations where we can allow and situations where we cannot.
Okay, very good. Let's give Daphne a chance and then we can conclude on this.
Yeah, I think for me, if I saw a man with a big bag of money passing by me, first of all, I would assume there's a different arrangement for people with big bags. Imagining I have a smaller bag. So maybe I would think the bigger the money, the faster you get into the queue, and we're in a bank, which needs money. So I would have so many assumptions in my mind. I would think there's a different arrangement for those with more money, maybe bulk. But also, if they passed by me in the line, I would also think that maybe they know the tellers and someone called them. I would just assume there's a different arrangement maybe for them.
Okay. Thank you so much, Doctor, and thank you so much, Joanna, for those insights. So this slide actually tells us that there is a mixed feeling, especially when it comes to what is a norm, when it comes to the beliefs we have, because what you feel it's a norm, and at some point you actually get to understand, and you're like, okay, this, I think it is acceptable. But again, we have also seen where society, in case you defy the norm, it disapproves of it and we get chaotic. And at some point, there is no sometimes understanding of, irrespective of whether that woman had a child or sick, you might not even want to understand, but rather judge that person. So that's why we come up with this agenda and social norms programming interventions to understand, to go further and understand how are these norms coming about, how are they acceptable, how are they disapproved, and of course the why are they considered as norms, and whether these are acceptable or unacceptable, or these are approved or not approved by the society. So there are many dimensions on how we can look at them. So just to give a brief definition about what a social norm is, and someone rightly mentioned about this is unspoken rules that different people and different cultures have about how we should behave. For example, the standing a line, it's a social norm that anyone should be able to be in the line and be served at a time, at their right time. While the gender norms are rules that tell us how the women and how the men should behave. And of course, sometimes these are more powerful norms that exist in the different forms in our cultures, in where we stay, but also in the entire world. So we feel that the gender norms actually are more powerful than even the social norms, because if it is everyone's business, then it doesn't become an issue. But when it is a norm exerted towards a woman or a man, then it becomes more powerful, and people will say, okay, if it's a woman who came, they will be served, and if it's a man, they will not be served. So you see how the difference between the social and the gender norms being outspoken, that the gender norm is onto a particular, a specific sex. Either it's a woman, or it's a man, or it's a girl, or it's a boy. And of course, we are saying that these may seem rigid and unchanging, but they actually can change in many instances, given that we understand the perspective under which these manifest, we can be able to change these norms. So that moves me to my the next session of how do we identify these social norms? Because it's unless we understand them, it's unless we identify them, and then we can be able to challenge and change these norms. So I'll speak to a case scenario of care and a specific project, because then I want to make it more toned down. So we are saying gender analysis is usually a minimum requirement for social and gender norms identification. And of course, this is a systematic way of identifying key gender issues, key gender inequalities, and of course, how these are gendered in the different sectors, the economic, the livelihood, the health, and of course, bringing in the different perspectives of who is most affected in terms of the age, in terms of disability, in terms of sexuality, and of course, intersectionalities. So unless we go deeper to interrogate how these gender and social norms manifest themselves and who is affected, but also trying to map out these norms, either social or gender, and how they are practiced, how they are acceptable, how they are unacceptable, as to whether they are positive or negative. We might want to address them, but we shall not do much in terms of shifting the norms. So what usually happens, we should be able to scan the environment, the broader context, but also zero down to a more contextual friendly and a more contextual focused sort of a sector-based, core areas of inquiry into which these norms manifest. I'll give an example of these domains. In care, we use these major domains of change or areas of inquiry to identify the different social and gender norms. In health, in gender programming, in economic empowerment, we see household decision-making, control over productive and economic assets, but also in health, we are looking at control over one's body, and of course, violence and restorative justice. So there are a number of domains through which we can look at these social and gender norms and try to unpack how these are manifesting and how they are affecting the different people with the different genders, the men, the women, the girls, the boys, and of course, the different age grouping. And then that's when we come down to strategically understand how we can address those issues. So we prioritize and of course, design strategic interventions to be able to address those norms. And I'll give a scenario when it comes to the case of care and the SHUSOAS project. So in the SHUSOAS project, we actually, this is a sexual and reproductive and economic empowerment project for care. And of course, in the areas of inquiry, we looked at the gender division of labor, the household decision-making, but also the control over productive assets in the economic sector, and in the health sector, we were looking at the control over one's body and what norms are manifested in the community in those domains. So these are the tools. So I'll speak to the tools we are using or we used to identify the norms that I'll share in a minute. We have the But Why tool, and this But Why helps us to interrogate why are these norms manifested the way they manifest? What are the causes, the root causes? And of course, we have the social mapping, which also helps us to identify the access to services. So this was a tool we used to identify the norms that are affecting women and girls, boys and men to access services in the different in the communities, and of course we are working in 4 districts. But also we have the problem tree, which also helped us to understand the root causes of these norms that we are going to unpack or address within our within the project. We speak to the gender box. This is a tool that probably I will not speak to because you've interfaced with it, but it is a tool also to help us understand how does what does the community expect a woman to do? What does the community expect a man to do? And of course, why and how do they approve those particular aspects for the different genders? So in this, we identify the different norms that are actually affecting or causing the gender inequalities to the different people within the community. We have the pile sorting as well, which helps us now to understand the gender division of labor. When you look at this example, the scenario that I'm projecting, you will find that most of the work that is aligned to the women is more of the domestic work, but that is aligned to the man is more in the public sphere. So this is where you identify norms that are actually around gender division of labor and how this is approved within the community. We have the body mapping, which I will not really spend more time. These are just visuals to show you that some of these tools are to help us ourselves, even as staff, to unpack, to undo some of the beliefs that we have in terms of how we approve of these norms that manifest in the communities. And these are very interesting tools. But to zero down to our case study, in the gender division of labor, we identified the norms that we are actually addressing and also came up with strategies to address those norms. For example, we have men do not cook. And if they cook, there is loss of manhood and there is ridicule. So that is a norm that is within our communities. But also there are more norms. For example, men's work is in the public space while women's work is in the household. And this is because women are weak and can only manage household work, while men are strong and can manage work within the public sphere, which is more for strong, it needs more strength. And of course, these are things that are actually on ground. But these are the norms we zero down to address within the gender division of labor with the male involvement in care, work, and of course with the different approaches I will speak to. But also looking at control over productive assets, we have women do not own property like land, but also other economic resources. And this led us to design economic empowerment activities specifically for the girls and the women to empower them to get access to productive assets. And of course, there are many, I will not speak to them because of the time, but you can read the slides when I share so that you see how we are approaching this and designing interventions that are geared towards addressing the specific norms that you have identified. So in conclusion here, it's very hard for you to design interventions and to shift norms without identifying which norms you are going to shift. Yeah, so we have that to appreciate the norm, and then we are able to design appropriate interventions. So moving forward to, I'm sorry, I will not give time to for the questions, but let's keep them coming in the chat. We shall address them at once. So upon identifying the norms, we then move into design specific interventions, specific strategies and approaches to address those underlying norms, social and gender norms. And maybe what I forgot to mention out here is that the norms that are in this slide are more gender norms that are actually happening to a particular or specific gender. And these are manifesting differently for the different people. And of course, that helps you design specific or integrated or mainstreamed interventions to address these norms. So in the strategies that CARE is using to address these norms, we have the engaging men and boys approach. We have the women voice and leadership, and this is specifically to address the access, the decision-making, norms around decision-making. But also we have the social analysis and action approach, which is cross-cutting across all kinds of social and gender norms. And in this presentation, I'll zero down to this social analysis and action to give you a more insight on how this can help us shift the norms that we are addressing or working on. But all the listed approaches are used to shift these gender norms, case scenario within CARE. So for social and analysis and action, we believe that change starts with me. And this is a CARE-led model. And I think one of the pillars as was introduced is ensuring that we co-create and social norms resources and strategies. So this is a homegrown tool or approach which helps us to address the social norms right from the root causes. So we start with the transforming the staff capacity. Myself or you on this call, we grew up in the society where we also have our own biases, we have our own beliefs, and of course, sometimes we approve of these norms. So we start with working around transforming our own capacities in how we perceive, how we identify, how we understand these norms, the social and gender norms. And of course, we then move into reflect with the communities upon addressing our own biases, but also having those skills that are needed to transform or shift these social norms within the community. So we reflect with the communities and of course, making them understand and identify these norms by themselves. And of course, upon this appreciation of the gender inequalities and how these norms are actually causing harm or these gendered inequalities to the different people within the community, they are then able to move out and plan for specific actions that identify, or I'm sorry, that address these gender and social norms. And of course, here we expect them to come up with specific actions that they are going to, they are community-led to ensure that we transform, we shift these norms from right from the households to the communities, and then we have the advocacy within the community structures. And of course, we see the last level being the implementation of these plans and ensuring that we capture the changes as they happen. And why are we doing that? Is to ensure that that the staff become active champions of the gender equality, but also the individuals and the communities are conscious and are motivated to change these unequal gender and power norms that are in their own community, but also to increase the collective self-efficacy of the community, to ensure that these solutions are coming from them and they are implemented by themselves. And that's where we shall have a transformative shift in terms of having these norms changing and also being impactful to the community. And by then we shall ensure we have the gender equality we are all striving to achieve. And of course, these are just, the next slide is to show the domains of change using this social analysis and action approach of in the different 4 pillars of staff being champions of gender equality, increasing the community's motivation to change, but also having collective efforts to change these norms. And of course, as they plan, we ensure that we identify the norms that they are actually going to change. And of course, mapping out how the different approaches they are going to change, they are going to use to change those norms. And of course, mapping out the stakeholders, the key gatekeepers who should be involved, who should be influenced. And of course, the risks, of course, these are risky ventures. So we map out the risks that could be encountered and how to deal with those risks. And of course, this is also cyclical, that upon addressing or shifting one norm, we then identify another norm which is prioritized within the community and plan to change that norm as well. So as we move into the measurement, this case in point, it is an approach that gives you a complete cycle of planning that is reflecting with the community, planning for action, implementing these actions, but then evaluation, which is usually the missing link in social and gender norms work. So how do we ensure that we evaluate and we monitor, evaluate, and we learn how these norms are shifting in our communities? And of course, this is an embedded phase in this social analysis and action that must happen for us to have this approach, a complete process. So moving into how do we measure, how do we monitor, how do we evaluate social norms work? This is not different from any other programming. As we are doing social norms shifting, we must be concerned about the results. And I think I will focus more on the last box as I demonstrate this results-based measurement and of course, implementation. Results are very key in social norms work and measurement. We must be able to generate results so that we can tell the complete story of our work. And how we do that is by ensuring that we are monitoring the quality and the efficacy of implementation, knowing that the fidelity of the process of social norms shifting is very critical and key. Our own biases can bias the community. So how do you deliver? How do you reflect with the communities without projecting or without showing your own biases? So that quality of the approach is very key, but also the efficacy, the effectiveness of implementation is very key for us to monitor. Remember, in social norms work, change happens at any time. So how do we look at change as a process, not as an end? So in each and every process, we should be monitoring the changes that are happening. And in terms of quality, we are speaking to the facilitation skills, our own commitment onto this gender equality programming and work, but also ensuring that we have regular reflections in the work we are doing. How are we shifting these norms? So those are some of the things we must be monitoring in as we deliver social norms work, but also tracking this progress as an initiative, and of course the successes of these activities we are doing is very critical. So we have to integrate those reflective processes and of course use the same tools to map out those changes that are happening, but also understanding the pathways of change in gender and social norms. And of course, using the different approaches, both qualitative and quantitative, to ensure that we capture the changing behaviors the changing norms, and also the changes that are happening at a community and a structural level. So these approaches we should be already thinking through, and the tools are available for us to use. So this is what we usually do on a daily basis as we implement gender and social norms work. And of course, the MIL framework for us is ensuring that we have a situation analysis as a base minimum for social and gender norms work, but also ensuring that we are monitoring and we are learning from the implementation in aspects of the quality and the effectiveness of delivering this work. As well, we also ensure that at each process, at each step, we should be monitoring the different changes that are happening. But key is integrating indicators for measuring the change. You know, an indicator is something that shows you whether you're moving in the right direction or you're actually making the work worse or you're doing harm. So if we don't have an indicator in your program or in your work that tells you whether you're actually shifting the norms or you're making it worse, then you need to check yourselves in that particular intervention and integrate these specific indicators. So I've spoken about the approach. We should be able to have a participatory approach of monitoring. We should be ensuring that we have qualitative and quantitative approaches, and there are tools that we have as care that we use, like the social norms analysis map, the personal transformation trackers, the outcome mapping, the rolling profiles, the focus group discussions are also very easy tools for us to use, but also having evaluative processes periodical to ensure that you are measuring the change that is happening in your programs. So I had a slide on the scenarios, but because of the time, our time is up. I will share this as an example of how we project the changes that are happening as we do this work. And this is a scenario of SHISOA's project that we are implementing, and we pick this through a rolling profile tool that can tell us whether we are actually changing the norm or we are not, and what are the voices saying from the community. So, and of course, I'm giving some of the indicators we are using to make sure we are changing. Okay, so those are just a sample of them that we can already add. For example, percentage of respondents who report gender equitable attitudes. That is something that we can measure using the GEM scales that are available for us, and we can be able to understand how these are shifting in the different locations at different periods of time. So to conclude this, we are saying gender analysis is very key to social norms work, as it enables us to identify and prioritize the norms that we are changing. But also we are saying this, unless we identify these norms and prioritize them, we cannot be able to tell the complete story of our impact. So it is very clear that we should be able to prioritize the norm, and then we are able to measure the impact that we are creating by delivering these social norms interventions. I want to thank you and hand back to the moderator.
Thank you so much, Teddy. I think let's give her flowers in whatever way, claps, flowers, please. Thank you so much. And colleagues, I see we've come to the end of our session, but we want to hear from you. What are some of the comments, quick comments, questions that you may have regarding this presentation that we've just had? Please type those, or even you can unmute yourself and ask a question. So I want to hear from you. What are some of those comments that you have now that you've had some of the ways you can actually identify your social norms, and you know, and also how you can design these interventions and also how you can monitor and evaluate. Are there any comments? I see a lot of comments is to share the PowerPoint.
Thank you so much, presenter. Thank you for those enlightening presentations that you've given to us. You also shared the key domains in health. When we are looking at social and gender norms, I'm just wondering, are there any other gender dimensions that we need to know about when we are looking at social and gender norms in other sectors, let's say agriculture? Thank you.
Okay, I think you can respond immediately to that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Yes, there are other domains we can explore as we, of course, as we are prioritizing the norms. For example, for livelihoods, we have control over productive assets. And usually this is where issues like women do not own land, property like land comes in. And of course, us digging deeper into the why, the how, the effects of that can help you understand and unpack the interventions that you need to bring into such an environment. And of course, we have also, in terms of violence and restorative justice, because this manifests in the different sectors, even in the livelihoods, whereby GBV happens because, because of the different aspects that come into your implementation. So how do you also integrate this as a domain into your livelihood programs? Gender division of labor, who does what? Who does the backyard gardening? Who does the productive farming and all that? So these are domains that can be prioritized depending on the sector you're working in. Thank you. Daphne, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you very much for that lovely presentation. I sort of have two interlinked questions. The first one is, when you're measuring gender and social norms, how do you attribute the shifts or the changes to your intervention? Because sometimes it's so difficult. And very many times the shifts can be, for instance, in Uganda, there's so much work that has happened with gender awareness trainings and gender interventions. How do you attribute those changes to your intervention, which is a 2-year intervention, a 3-year intervention? Doesn't it sometimes end up being too short a time for you to measure that shift? That is the first question. The second question I have is, I find that sometimes gender and social norms work is so context specific to a certain area. How can it be applied? Can it be applied? Can the findings be generalizable, or they're always specific?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Daphne, for those questions. And I think they are very critical questions. So the first one, how do you attribute the shifts to the work we are doing? And if I'm to relate to the presentation I said we should look at this social norms measurement as a process, not as an end. And in so doing, we should be able to capture the changes as they happen. And as these changes happen, we are able to attribute to why they are happening. Is it as a result of our intervention? Is it as a result of other interventions within the program? And of course, we understand we need a force. We need to influence others to join us, because these are aspects that affect everyone within the community. So, but how do we approach that in our social norms and social and gender norms work is to make sure that we embed measurement right from the start. And that's why we mentioned we must start with analysis, an assessment of where we are at. What are the norms we are seeing? What is happening at the moment as before we start even our intervention? And doing that and reflecting with the community, we are validating that actually these things are happening and this is the reason why they are happening and we need to do A, B, C, D to change. So upon deriving those actions, we are able to monitor at each step of the implementation, what is changing, and we are able to tell the story as it happens. We should not wait until the end when we are doing midterm, end line to tell the story, to capture the changes and attribute ourselves. No, we should be monitoring the processes and documenting the changes, the results as they happen. Yeah, and of course, mapping out the new manifestations that we need to prioritize as well. Then the second is context specific to and generalized. I should say social and gender norms actually manifest themselves in specific contexts and to specific, say, people. So how do we already contextualize those norms as they happen? And also, how do we design interventions that address those norms in those specific contexts? But definitely, there are those that manifest generally across, and we can generalize those. And of course, for example, I'll give an example of the gender and reproductive justice, the GBV programming. One of the norms is that reporting a case brings a curse to the girl. That is a norm that you find everywhere. In the central, they say you don't say what is happening in your bedroom. But it's because of that norm that these things should be sorted out in the house. But yet these are harmful practices that are affecting the girls and the women. And at some point, these happen generally. And how do we address those as they happen and generalize such norms? So I want to thank you and over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Teddy. You've really helped us to understand the processes of identifying these social norms through a scientific process, but also coming up with norm-shifting interventions and assessing the change. I know we would have wanted this to continue on and on because it's so interesting, but unfortunately our time has come to an end and we want to bring this session to a close. Just a reminder, colleagues, that Dr. Agaba posted the registration link. If you want to become a member of the EALC, this learning collaborative, please, there's a registration link that has already been put up in the chat box. Please, you can be part of this, you can be a member, you can benefit from all these tools and resources. So please make it a point to join and share with others, invite others to join. You can also follow us up in our different social media spaces. We have a very active LinkedIn page, that's the site up there. We are also going to post the link in the chat box. So please, if you're interested in learning more about the EALC, please visit us on our LinkedIn page. There's always a lot of resources, our newsletter is there, and a lot of information. Thank you so much once again, and we want to say thank you.
Edith, before you close it off, we also have an upcoming activity. We have a webinar at the end of this month. So we have these webinars that run every month. So if you want to get those notifications, it would be easier if you're registered as a member, because then we can get your email and send you the notification. So on 28th August, we have an upcoming webinar on attitudes on child sexual abuse from a study sourced from both Tanzania and Uganda. But also we have other opportunities for you to participate. Like we want to put out a series of people sharing positive social norms in their communities, in which everyone can participate and send in those stories. So basically the EALC is a very collaborative initiative, and we want you to participate more for those who would like to have their capacity built on gender and social norms. So register, become part of the collaborative, and find out more information from our usual email notifications. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And just in addition to that, there's another link that Dr. posted in the chat box about annual survey. We always run this annual survey around this time to hear from your members. If you participated in our other activities before and you're a member, kindly follow that link there. We have also, I think, reached out to you severally to fill in the form. It's just a quick form. We want to hear from you. We want to know, are you benefiting from this learning collaborative? Do you have suggestions for how it can be made better? So this is very important. So kindly spare some minutes to respond to that survey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
And we'll
you,
be happy to
Teddy.
hear from you.
Thank you so much, our moderator, and thank you so much for attending.
Yeah, so colleagues, we'll be sending you the presentation. That's why we are saying, please make sure that you share with us your emails. More so, if you register with us, then we'll have all your details, and then you'll be available on our listservs for us to share all the resources that we have internally. Thank you again for making time to participate in this event, and do have a great afternoon and evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Teddy. Thank you very much.
Bye.
The meeting got done. Bruno.